I'm not really sure why I'm creating this video, but I feel like a part of me just won't ever feel fulfilled if I don't. So here it goes. I want to introduce the concept of absolute logic. And the reason why a lot of people may jump to the conclusion that, oh, he's just trying to have a philosophical discussion about this, may be because, like, well, logic came from philosophy if you trace it back far enough. And it's just like, oh, well, then clearly you must only ever be talking about philosophy. And, like, it's not obvious to me that that's the case. And in a sense, it's kind of like absolute logic. Even the concept of absolute doesn't fit anywhere in our world. Like, there is nothing that is necessarily absolute. Yet, regardless of that fact, we can conceptualize the idea of absolute logic. Which kind of makes me wonder one thing. Why doesn't absolute logic exist now? And I guess the question is, who are we to say or know what absolute logic is? That specific question brings something out in me that's just like, create it. Create absolute logic. And the best way I can put this is that the more you speak, the less you know, but it's not necessarily about knowing it, because in a sense, in order to even explore it, you have to be it. So you already are absolute logic. You just have to kind of realize that that's the case. And, you know, that's the thing. It's just like, okay, you have to realize that that's the case, but remember, kind of, in the way that we live as humans right now, and as me right now, it's the idea of choice. Like, choice is super important. Like, if you go against choice, it's just like you're going against who you are. Like, you have a choice in everything and anything and that you do. And that's true. Yeah, that's true. It's true that you have a choice regardless of where you are. And I think it's really important that we start recognizing that. Yeah, we start recognizing that. And I'm not meaning just me, like the person who's watching this video. I don't know who you are, where you've been. But I know that if you're watching this video, something about what I'm doing right now, even if this seems like silly, it's meant for you, me. If this is what you've, like, you know, kind of brought to yourself, like, absolute logic. So let me expand on this idea further, because absolute logic, how do you say this? Absolute logic transcends anything and everything we've ever thought we knew scientifically. So let's say, you know, somebody's acting dumb. But you know what? In 10,000 years, that stupid thought that they had solved a problem that nobody would have ever thought about 10,000 years later. But because the stupid thought that they had 10,000 years ago lived on through history, that wasn't such a stupid thought now. And we see this played out so often in the world that it makes me not absolutely want to, how to say, I can articulate why somebody's reasoning may be wrong in split seconds, and yet I have to hold myself back because it's just like, why waste my time? And it's interesting. I don't necessarily like using the word waste my time, because I don't think time can be necessarily wasted. I think time can be transformed, and it's just kind of like, yeah, this is how I put it. Like, the potential of the, or is it the potential? Yeah, it's the potential, but not the effect. It's the, I think that's what it is. The highest potential of what I could be doing with the time that I have right then and there is obviously would not be well served to talk to that person at that moment in time. And so I can break down anybody's reasoning. And by the way, that's like, can I say that as a fact? No, can I say that as that's true? Can I say that that's true that I can break? Yeah. So it is true that give me enough time and exploration of concepts, and I can break down anybody's arguments for reasoning. Because ideally speaking, how do you say this? Absolute logic would never need to be argued against. And so for you to say that it has to be argued against is already speaking to how you're not necessarily understanding the concept of absolute logic. And absolute logic is important to me because, let's say there's a solution to every problem out there, but you just haven't thrown enough logic at it. It's just like, well, what kind of logic do you have to throw at something in order for it to be solved, regardless of what the problem is? Oh, well, absolute logic. What is that? And here's the thing, it's just like, we have it because we've been developing it ever since the concept of logic came about, but it's not obvious what we're supposed to do with it. Like, okay, I'm being logical about why I want this thing, but who's to say that it's logical to even have a why? You never even question the why. It's just like, no, this is the why and this is how it's going to be. Even this current pandemic situation right now, why are we all freaking out? Well, that's the thing. Why are we all freaking out? Because are we feeling attacked? And by the way, if you're feeling attacked, aren't you choosing to feel attacked rather than just understanding it logically? And you might say it's like, oh well, all right, you have a what is it called? What do people say to me? Oh, you have a brain structured for scientific thinking or something like that. And it's just like, oh, that's just not like, I don't see that as being obvious because how do you say it makes the way, can I say, yeah, I'll say this, the way women react to having a child appears to come from a place of absolute logic. It's just like, no, it's absolutely true that having a child will, in some way, shape, or form, feel meaningful. Therefore, I will pursue that action. And I guess the way that you put that is, I'm not trying to get political here. And in fact, I want to avoid all political argument because I'm talking about absolute logic here. I'm not trying to make a stance, or I'm not trying to state opinions. I'm trying to state statements that which align themselves with absolute logic. Because if we don't have absolute logic, then there would be no reason to continue to pursue forward. Because I was like, oh, we figured it out. All right, it's done. Zip, nada, done. Nothing else needs to be done. But here's the thing. In this world of ours, where we choose to create, you can choose to go against everything that logically was set up. Which is why the concept of absolute logic is so intriguing. Because, because it's logical to question what was logical. That's a weird statement, but holds true. It's logical to question what is logical. Because, and I think even Star Trek said it, Spock says it, it's like if you run into a commonality where illogical things happen, then it would only be logical to assume that the uncommon becomes commonplace. I'm paraphrasing, something like that. But that's the thing. It's just like, well, absolute logic would have to incorporate that, would have to integrate that, would have to be competent about the knowledge that was given and then have evolved from that. Because you can't stay who you are right now. Because if you are, then you have everything figured out. And as far as you can tell, you just, stay in bed and let the world figure itself out. But that's not the case. If it was that simple, you wouldn't need to go to the bathroom, you wouldn't need to eat, you wouldn't have this innate anxiety when you don't interact, you wouldn't, going against all of those things so far have been scientifically proven to not be good for humans. Now, yes, you get the psychopath. But here's the thing, even psychopaths yeah, I think I can say this appropriately. Psychopaths currently crave more attention than normal humans do. They fantasize it in a certain degree that's I'll be honest, I don't necessarily understand it, but I know that they do fantasize obsessively to an extent that's kind of terrifying, but that's not the point here. The point here is that, what if that was logical? What if it's logical for psychopaths to exist? What if? I'm not saying it has to be true. I'm not saying that it's wrong or right or anything like that. I'm just saying, what if it was true? What kind of world do we have to live in? And everybody's afraid to ask that question. And I'm super confused as to, we all sit here and we all dabble about in the realm of make-believe through video game stories, books, and movies, and all these things. Like, we just sit there like, yep, it's very fun to see the hero win. Which is fine. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. But who's to say that you can't be the hero of your own story? Because as far as I can tell, when you're in flow, which is the best thing I can, or the closest thing I can put, is a state of mind in which what you do, the actions that you do don't have any relevance to time, because you would want to do it all the time. How would you put it? When those actions occur like that, it doesn't matter what you're doing, because so let's say this. When you're in flow, you remember. And what are you remembering? What it was like when time didn't have a logical value to everybody else. And as far as I can tell, that same concept applies to how we love heroes. Like, why do we watch heroes over and over again on TV and video games? Like, why? Because it's kind of like, right, this is what flow is like. Flow is when everything is against you and you power through like it's absolutely nothing. Funny how I said absolutely nothing here. But that's the thing. Absolute has a way that transcends anything and everything that we can think of right now. And what do we talk about instead than absolute, right? Like, what is absolute? And here's what I'm not trying to get an answer. I'm just trying to get a discussion. That's all I want here. I'm not trying to say, I was like, oh, you absolutely are wrong. Like, first of all, to assume that you're absolutely wrong would be idiotic, because as I explained in an earlier example, maybe it is wrong right now, but 10,000 years from now, it was the most right thing you could ever think of. But what are we going to do? No, we're going to judge it. We're going to stop it. We're going to tell you that you're doing it wrong. We're going to tell you that, instead of doing that, we're going to have to do it this way. And it's just like, okay, here's the thing. Yes, sure, that is true. You can choose to do that. Nobody will stop you. But that's not what happens. What happens is people choose to enforce their ideas on other people, and that's just massively dangerous. Like, I'm sorry, but you don't have to force anybody to do anything. You can either integrate, or as far as I'm concerned, you can get out. Because it's not that hard to, like, let's say you're having a dispute and the entire dispute for the rest of your life would be over and you never would have to deal with it again if you just said you're sorry. What are you going to choose? No, your ego is just going to come out. You're going to say, like, no, I have a point. I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to be doing that. I shouldn't have to, like, give myself up for this. It's just like, okay, but here's the thing. You would never have to deal with it again, period, if you just said you're sorry. But people, this is an accurate statement? Yeah, this would be a currently accurate statement, is that more often than not, people aren't observant of how those feelings come about to the point where you can actually say, it's like, oh, okay, so I mean, I do it this specifically, but I don't imagine most people would have to do it this specifically. But let's say all the prerequisites in order for me to never deal with this again are in place. And now that they're in place, if I just strictly say I'm sorry, I should theoretically never deal with it again. Okay, let's try this theory out. I'm sorry. And then here's the other part, is that I see it all the time, because I've experienced this all the time. People don't know how to respond to that sometimes. They're just like, you give me what I want, and I'm supposed to feel satisfied with this. And you're validating everything that I'm saying. And now we can just say that I had a point, and I don't have to argue with you again. And you're just like, yeah, let's just end it. Because what? You want more fighting? You want wars? you want to disagree. You want. And now here's the thing: there's nothing wrong in, so to speak, establishing a set of rules in which to argue, to have fun in the sense of exploring ideas. That's totally fine. But what I'm saying is, like, when yeah, I have to get specific. When these rules are established, you should not have to inflict harm into other people. Well, you should not have to inflict harm. I think it would be impeccable to choose not to inflict harm as part of the rules in a game like that, because then then it would be reinforcing psychological safety. Because oh man, I forgot this book. It was Indistractable. I forgot who the author was. I think it was Nir Eyal. Anyways, psychological safety is massively important to creativity and ingenuity and just teamwork. And to basically say, like, you know what? That's not important. We're going to get our way done no matter what. And not accounting for psychological safety just seems naive. Naive to the point that you show how incompetent you are. Because I don't see that as, like, here's everything that we currently have scientifically. I'm not even trying to use absolute logic here. Just, like, scientifically, the current science that we have shows, that the data shows, it is better for employees to have psychological safety. All right, so if it's good for employees, then who's to say that it wouldn't be good for discussions? But that's not how we treat each other. And like, as far as I'm concerned, like, okay, that's fine. But let's start talking about it. Please. I like humans. I love humans. I want us to be more integrated. I want us to It's not that I don't think we understand each other. It's more that I don't think we've realized how in touch we can be with each other. That can be construed in a bunch of weird ways, but that's not what I'm, like, trying to say. What I'm trying to get at is absolute isn't something we're supposed to be afraid of. And everybody wants to treat it as it is something to be afraid of. And I want to logically explain through the concept or through the exploration of absolute logic that you don't have to be afraid. And like, even if you were to be afraid, absolute logic would be able to explain that. And then everybody would have a basis of like, oh, these are the reasons why you're afraid. How did we get this? From absolute logic. That's okay. And you can even use it for happiness, sadness, anger, lust, fear, like anything you can think of. Like, music is a form of expressing absolute logic that we can't currently articulate through language yet. But I think it's just a matter of time before we start actually caring about what we say and how we say it, and being very impeccable or particular or precise. Those words combined and expressing ourselves that way, like, that's going to become really important. And it's already becoming really important, because to not care about the details would basically to not care about the truth. And you see this construed all the time in law, in, the court. But here's the thing. It was set up that way, and it wasn't set up well. Let's set it up better. Let's transform it. We can do better. And, of course, like, how do you say? Do I want to do something about this? Yeah. Do I know exactly what I'm going to do about it? No, but can we at least start having the discussion? Please? Like, you think I'm an idiot? Okay, please explain to me why you think I'm an idiot. I'm willing to even have an argument about idiocy. I'm willing to do that. And I'm willing to accept that I would be an idiot. I'm willing to accept that I would be a fool. I'm willing to accept that I would be anything, really. If you can explain it to me. But here's the thing. I don't think I've actually necessarily sat in a conversation with somebody and just been like, you understand me and I understand you and we can come to a consensus. More often than not, I really do think that through my personal experiences, through philosophical thinking and discussion and experience, through philosophical experiences, really, that it's hard it's hard to have an argument with somebody that has the perspective of absolute logic. Because in order for you to say those words would mean that time is logical, however it's used. That means actions are logical, however they're used. And we can get even more complex. We can say stories are logical, no matter how they are used. Companies are logical, no matter how they are used. And that's the thing. Absolute logic makes logic of absolutely everything. But you think that, oh well, explain to me this random once upon a thing that I never really thought about, but now I want to know about. Like, it can do that. Like, what makes you think it can't? It's absolute. And it just, like, the creation of absolute logic is the reason why. I guess that's the thing. We haven't really created absolute logic yet. But why? Because we haven't even acknowledged, like, I was having conversations with a few friends the other day about this, and I want to get this out there in the sense of, I want to get this out there to see, like, what people think, because something about how things were structured says that there's no meaning behind these words yet. And in my mind, like, there's so much meaning packed into it. But absolute creation and absolute nothingness, those mean a lot to me. But when I've asked other people, they're just like, there's no meaning there. There's like nothing. I don't see, sense, feel anything from those words. And I think that's the most ludicrous thing ever. Because, well, of course, I'm using the current ludicrous in my current form as my human self, whatever you want to call it. But that's the thing. Okay, you don't see anything from it. But the utility and absolute creation and absolute nothingness comes from the idea that you don't need to have... you don't ever need to stop transforming a concept. Ever. But people want to. And don't get me wrong. Yeah, limit yourself. Go for it. You can choose whatever you want to do, and maybe it'll... And you know what? It's probably like some... I think it's very commonplace for humans to choose that consistently. But I'm just not interested in seeing a broken system that causes people suffering and saying that, like, we're just gonna have to deal with it. Like, no, I'm willing to fight for a better quality of life. And that's the thing. Why fight when it's already there and we just have to create it? And that's the thing that I don't really understand necessarily from the arguments that people have in regards to changing the system. Well, the one argument that I will agree with is that, like, well, it typically takes like thousands of tries before we actually find something that works. And I'm like, okay, what were the common things that came about from the people that worked that we can all pull from to better understand how they came about those things? And you want to know what? I don't think I've ever seen a study like that. And I'm sure if a competent person went about doing that, we'd be on our way to less suffering. But that's not the case yet. And if it was, then I just don't see the need for all the suffering that we have now. And do I come here with a solution? No, I come here with a wanting to openly discuss these things, with not being chastised, without having to be ostracized. Well, here's the thing. If you want to chastise, ostracize, whatever, I don't stop you from choosing. But if I had to choose between conceptualizing less suffering and accepting more suffering merely because I don't want to do anything, I would rather choose to conceptualize less suffering and see if I can create that. Because that's what humans are. We're here to transform the world. Absolutely. Like, everything up until now, that's what it is. That's what we are. We're here to transform against all anger, all fear, anything that's really negative. The shadow, we can transform the shadow. We can transform everything and anything that just isn't aligned with, so to speak, our highest potential. Potential is a very cool word, but highest potential. Anyways, so I guess I'm ending this video right here because I don't really necessarily know what to say, but you know, even ending this video right here, like it, it it's it hmm. Although it's spoken from the closest thing that I would say is the heart, it finally feels like it's opening. Like here during this pandemic, more than ever, it finally feels like we're gonna get serious. Like we're gonna get serious about the potential of who we are, and it's gonna be it's gonna be amazing. It's gonna be awesome. I'm so excited. I'm really excited. The future's looking really good. Because yeah, the future's looking really good. Drink lots of water, get plenty of rest.